John Boyega was once given his big break by Disney and their biggest investment ever, but it didn't go as planned and now he's trashing the company. John Boyega became a global name doing Star Wars Episode 7, which was a huge hit, making $2.1 billion on a budget of $447 million and also got an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes with audiences. The reason John Boyega was picked for the role was he had almost no big roles prior, and J.J. Abrams wanted the idea of people seeing the character and not seeing a famous actor. Also, Disney was happy with that idea because of salary, where they only paid Daisy Ridley and John Boyega $150,000 each for Star Wars Episode 7. Just to put that in perspective how little that is, Harrison Ford was paid $25 million for Episode 7, where he was in the movie for 23 minutes, meaning in 17 seconds he made what Daisy Ridley and John Boyega made combined. Still, everything was going well until John Boyega noticed a major problem with the release of Star Wars Episode 7, where in the US poster he's featured prominently, while in the Chinese poster he's barely even there. Sadly, a really common thing studios do for international releases, specifically in China, with another example being Disney actually photoshopping a mask on Chadwick Boseman's face for the release of Black Panther. And it's even happened more recently with Sharon Duncan Brewster, who was removed from the Chinese poster for the movie Dune. When John Boyega learned that he was censored in the Chinese poster for Star Wars, he learned the reason very quickly was racism and this perception that movies with black actors will make less money in China, so they censored him because of that. There is sadly some truth to it, with one example being Ant-Man 2, which made $622 million globally in 2018, with $118 million of that being from China. By comparison, Black Panther, which made over twice as much money as Ant-Man 2 that same year, making $1.3 billion, actually only made $108 million in China, meaning that even though it made over twice as much globally, it made less in China. But because Star Wars Episode 7 made $127 million in China, John Boyega was seen as a liability there and would have his screen time reduced in the future movies. Despite that, John Boyega was given a big promise by J.J. Abrams, saying he envisioned his character eventually leading a stormtrooper rebellion, having a huge part in the story. The issue was J.J. Abrams wasn't directing Star Wars Episode 8, and Rian Johnson was brought in by Disney, who actually had a very different order and actually sidelined John Boyega's character. That's because Disney thought Adam Driver was a bigger draw than John Boyega, so they actually cut John Boyega's screen time down, where he was in 26% of Star Wars Episode 7, but only in 13% of Star Wars Episode 8. When John Boyega complained to Disney that he wasn't getting the story in Episode 8 that J.J. Abrams promised him, they informed him that J.J. Abrams' ideas had no actual impact in the sequels going forward, and he was just responsible for Episode 7. And J.J. Abrams did explain to the public that even when he did direct Star Wars Episode 7, he had almost no power, with another big example being the character of Snoke, where he wasn't allowed to pick the character's gender, design, or species. And John Boyega would later reveal he hated the storyline for Star Wars Episode 8 that he was given by Disney with Kelly Marie Tran, saying it felt like a side plot that had no consequence on the overall story, and he just hated the entire thing. John Boyega definitely wasn't the only one who hated that story, where Star Wars Episode 8 made $700 million less than Star Wars Episode 7 did, and also got only a 41% with audiences on Rotten Tomatoes. But because that, J.J. Abrams was brought back in to direct Star Wars Episode 9, but the problem was J.J. Abrams had almost no power over Disney, and he called it the worst experience of his life directing that movie. With one big example being Disney asking J.J. Abrams to resurrect the character of Palpatine to boost sales, which he did so, but then the origin to why he was resurrected got completely cut from the movie, with Disney saying it wasn't important, which a lot of people thought was really stupid. Disney also made J.J. Abrams change his plan for Adam Driver's character, where originally he was supposed to become worse and worse of a villain, where instead he got a redemption arc and a romance with Daisy Ridley's character, which J.J. Abrams absolutely hated. And finally, Disney told J.J. Abrams to sideline John Boyega's character, where he was only given 28 minutes of screen time in Star Wars Episode 9, which was less than half of the hour Daisy Ridley got. Making things worse, for the Chinese release of Star Wars Episode 9, John Boyega had 10 minutes of his screen time cut, so he was even more of an irrelevant character there. Because of all this, Star Wars Episode 9 got bad reviews, where it only made $1.1 billion on a budget of $416 million, meaning it actually only made a slight profit, which was nothing compared to the previous two movies. Star Wars was also in a really bad place, where just a year earlier they canceled all their spin-off movies because Solo failed, losing $100 million. And since that point, Disney's tried and failed miserably to try and get another Star Wars trilogy off the ground, where Taika Waititi, Patty Jenkins, and D&D were all signed to direct Star Wars trilogies, but they ended up getting canceled. They briefly had a resurgence with TV, where 16.7 million people watched Mandalorian Season 1 in the first 30 days when it came out on Disney+. Now even that's gone down the drain, where $230 million was spent on The Acolyte Season 1, which was a giant failure, and they ended up canceling it after just one season. There is one Star Wars movie that is officially supposed to be happening, and that's that Daisy Ridley was planning on doing a sequel to Star Wars Episode 9, which will take place 10 years later. But still, that idea's been bashed by Star Wars fans because they brought in Charmin Chenoy to direct the movie, where she has almost no experience as a director outside of documentaries and does market herself as a feminist activist. Still, that movie has been postponed a year, where they just fired the writer and hired a new one, and it's not clear if Charmin is going to continue directing the movie, so it might never end up happening. But still, many people have asked John Boyega if he does plan on returning for the new Star Wars movie, because his career hasn't gone so well since the Star Wars sequel trilogy ended, where his biggest movie was The Woman King, which did fail, making $97 million on a budget of $50 million. But it doesn't seem likely Disney would bring John Boyega back, because he did publicly criticize their treatment of his character, saying black characters get sidelined in Disney movies. And John Boyega didn't completely close the door on returning to Star Wars, saying that he would come back if he was given something that had almost equal screen time to Daisy Ridley, and a storyline that was originally like what J.J. Abrams promised. Sadly, even though I think J.J. Abrams had a really cool idea for his character, it's just never going to end up happening because of the comments he's made towards Disney, and also Disney wanting to appeal to China. And with that, I'm Charles Perallo. Please subscribe if you learned something.